Window one Fox, check one.
Oh, good evening, everyone, and we want to thank you for being with us again. I think we have a very uh, wonderful night tonight, a very interesting night tonight. I think you're going to find out a lot of things about a particular person who'll be with us in just a second. Um, we do want to also remind you, if you have any questions, you can please put them up on Facebook, and we will try to get to everyone as quickly as we can. And later on tonight, we are probably going to do a little bit of a tribute to Star Trek Day. But first, I do want to bring out someone who I was looking very forward to meeting. Um, and we're pleased and thrilled to introduce a young woman who is an author, president of the nonprofit, the Mars Generation, and an aspiring astronaut. Abigail Harrison, known online as Astronaut Abby. Hello, Abby.
Hi, it's nice to talk with you guys today.
Same here, and we really do appreciate you being with us. So just to get started, Abby, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what has led you on this journey?
Absolutely. So I aspire to be an astronaut and hopefully the first person to walk on Mars someday. And this is something that I've dreamt of and wanted to do ever since, well, for as long as I can remember. And when I was a teenager, I was about 13 years old, I started talking about this dream online. I started sharing it with the world through social media. And I ended up launching something that snowballed a little bit and has turned into me having roughly 1 million followers and fans who are now a part of my journey towards space. And that allowed me to then create a nonprofit that helps with my second passion, which my first passion is space exploration. My second passion is education and trying to make opportunities in space and STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, and math, more accessible to more people. And so I was able to use that kind of that public support that I had from all those people who were following along on my journey to become an astronaut to launch this nonprofit, the Mars Generation, that is now in its 4th year and does a variety of things like send students who live below the national poverty line to space camp on full paid scholarships, creates a lot of educational content, and in general really just tries to engage with the public to excite them about science and about space and to share, make it a more of a democratized thing, to make it so that more people have access to such wonderful topics and subjects.
Well, that's very admirable.
Thank you.
And there's so much more that you're involved in, which we'll talk about, but that's very admirable that you're
Thanks.
actually continuing it as well.
Yeah, it's in the 4th year now, and it's something that when I started, my co-founder and I started this nonprofit, we were just kind of dipping our toes in the water to see what we could do, and now we're in our 4th year, and it's still going strong. And every year, the opportunities and the things that we're able to do with the Mars Generation just get bigger and bigger, and it's great to be able to continue it as long as we have, and hopefully for a long time in the future.
Hopefully so. And I just, I almost want to say it's a side question, if I could ask it. But I've been following you for quite a while. I probably, like you, when I was very small, I was enamored by the space program. I grew up in the era of Gemini and Apollo. I hate to date myself, but that's where I come from. And then eventually, the shuttle and the International Space Station. And now we've got 2 Mars rovers on the planet, surveying the planet. I think they both just went dark, but we've got that, and we have the Perseverance rover on its way to Mars. And I'm thrilled to think that we're returning to space through the United States, through NASA, with the help of SpaceX. My question is, are these exciting times for you?
Oh, absolutely. So I oftentimes like to tell people that when they ask about, well, what's next for space exploration or what's happening right now, that we are living in the golden age of space exploration. I can't compare it to Mercury and Gemini and Apollo because, unlike you, and I'll unage myself here, I wasn't around for the. But what I can say is that as a young person growing up in the 21st century, it truly feels like I'm in a science fiction novel or TV show or movie, because the things that we've done already in space exploration, in addition to the things that we're about to do, like you said, having rovers on Mars and having the Perseverance rover on its way to Mars, even just the fact that for people who are 17 years old, they have never lived on a planet with every other human at the same time. There has always been a continual presence in space, a continual human presence on the International Space Station for the last 17 years, which is kind of a mind-blowing thing to think about, that we've been inhabiting that area for so long. And so I think that it's truly the golden age of space exploration right now, and that the things that we're going to see in our lifetimes and hopefully participate in are unimaginably interesting and exciting, the kind of exploration that is happening and will happen in the near future.
You know, it's fascinating. You said that the International Space Station has been there for 17 years. And I think that's really a testament, thinking about the old days, which is before your time, when, you know, you were in a tin can and you had, you know, a couple of watts of power trying to generate, you know, a computer, whatever signal. And now we've got these, in some cases, massive, um, you know, man-made objects in space that are really accommodating people.
Yeah, absolutely. We've come so far from the early days when originally, even you can think back to Sputnik and say that that launched to space, and the thing that people marveled at about that was that it created a noise. It generated like a radio signal. And now you think that the things we do in space are so much more advanced, so much farther down the road than that. We suddenly are creating systems like NASA's Space Launch System, which is supposed to be the most powerful rocket system ever built. We have companies like SpaceX and other commercial industry space companies that are launching humans from Earth, from the United States, back into space, and creating this not quite permanent, but at this point it's getting long enough that it seems semi-permanent habitation of space. In addition to all of the robotic exploration that's happened, it's crazy and really amazing, I think, to think about how far we've come, and then to keep that projection going and saying, where are we going to go in the next 40 or 50 years? What will people someday, when I'm hosting a podcast talking to the next generation of explorers and astronauts, what kinds of things will I be able to ask them about what they're going to do? And it'll be leaps and bounds different than what we've already done, I think.
And, you know, the way technology is changing, it'll be interesting to see in your lifetime. I mean, I know the changes in my lifetime, and I'm just absolutely amazed. But, you know, things are being reinvented every day. And that's why one of the reasons, and I'm so glad you're here, is because I'm very excited for you. I have two children who are about your age, and I'm excited for them. And I hope this does come to pass, and we do maybe get ourselves off of this planet, at least to explore someplace else.
Absolutely. And I think that when you bring up the way that technology is evolving and changing so rapidly in connection with space exploration, that's a topic that I always like to touch on when I can, and mention that part of what allows technology, the technologies that we use here on Earth, to exist and to change so rapidly and to improve and to change things, improve life here on Earth, part of what drives that is that innovation is exploration. It's pushing our boundaries. And in particular in space, space is such a difficult environment and place for us to explore. And when we do so, we reap the benefits here on Earth. We see all kinds of things in our daily lives that we use all the time that are a direct result of space exploration. And I think that for your kids and for me and for all the other young people out there, and for the next generation that's coming up, even younger than us, we face a lot of problems. It's really easy to look at Earth and say that space exploration is just about leaving Earth because, Earth is messed up or whatever right now. But the reality of the matter is that space exploration, at least to me, is about fixing those problems here on Earth, about making things better. Because by participating in this type of difficult exploration, one of the main goals with that is to improve life here on Earth and to improve economies, to improve technology, to really create a lot of forward motion in all of these areas. And I think that it's going to end up being an integral and important thing to your kids and to me and to the rest of our generation, that we continue to invest in space exploration to help both get off of Earth and to help save what we can here and do what we can.
Well, that was very well said. That's the only
Thank
thing
you.
I could say there. It was very well said. I just want to mention to the folks who are in the background, if you guys could do me a favor and keep an eye on emails. And if you see something, because I'm, for whatever reason, running a little blind here. But if there's a question that someone's asking Abby and you want to break in, just stop me from talking.
Everyone generally seems to be excited, so they're listening. I think she answered the question in the beginning, so one of the questions. So we're pretty good right now.
Good. Thanks, Ashley. So let's not really change the subject, but let's talk about something a little different. And I saw that it's been announced that you've written a book that's about to be published called Dream Big: How to Reach for Your Stars. It'll be published in January of next year. And it's through Penguin Random House. And I have a lot of questions for you. And there's a copy of Abby's book. So please be on the lookout for that. So the first question I have is, why did you choose to write the book?
So thank you for asking. I chose to write this book because I have had a lot of incredible opportunities and experiences over the last, I suppose it's been about a decade now, that I've been really actively chasing after this dream of mine, this dream to go to space. That includes getting to see incredible things. I've gone to launches firsthand. I've gone to Baikonur, Kazakhstan to watch an astronaut who was mentoring me launch to the International Space Station. I've gotten to work in conjunction with astronauts in space. I've gotten to meet and interview some of the legends of the Apollo program and lots of other incredible people in the space industry. And that's just a smattering of some of the incredible opportunities that I've had. And for me, writing this book was a way to share those. It was a way to make sure that the things that I feel incredibly fortunate both to have done and to have learned. So all of these lessons that I've learned and these experiences that I've had, to make sure that they don't just stay with one person, but instead to try and create another way, another media to share that and to make it so that more people have access to some of those things that I had access to.
Well said. Well said. I think you touched on the next question I was going to ask you, but what's your goal for the book? What do you hope it will really maybe inspire in people?
So a big part of what Dream Big is about is guiding the reader on both discovering what it is that they are passionate about, what it is that their big dream title might be, and then how they can go about chasing after that and really being successful in doing so. And it was written with a focus on teenagers and young adults, but I think that at least it was my intention, despite writing it towards that age range, to make it applicable and accessible to an even wider range of people. So whether you're an adult or if you're 5 years old and your parents are helping you read it, I think that there's a lot in there that can be really engaging and exciting to a wide range of people. But the main goal with it is to create this blueprint or this guideline for other people. And like I said, especially for this demographic of teenagers and young adults, of having a structure of how to figure out what it is you're excited about, and then how you can use that to make change in the world. And I think that it wasn't planned. So I have to say, it wasn't planned to be written and released during a global pandemic. But I think that the timing actually fits really well, because there are a lot of people, not just young people, but people in general, who are in a different situation than they were in before, and who are maybe looking for some sort of grounding, who are looking for how to structure these next steps that they're going to take now that a lot of things have changed and become uncertain for so many of us. And so I think that this book has the potential to really help be that guide stone for people. So can't say I'm happy with what's happening, but I at least hope that releasing this is a bright moment in the current situation.
That's terrific, really. It just get off topic for a second, but there's a phrase that I heard just about a week or so ago, and I think your book might be appropriate to that phrase. And a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are in a very dark place right now. And someone said, if you can't find the light, be the light.
Yeah.
And I think your book goes a long way to giving that positive spin to people who might otherwise, be lost.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. That's definitely one of the hopes that I have for this book, is that's the big hope, actually, is that it can help people find their way and help them feel confident in their ability to, to have a dream and to chase after it. If I can do it, if I can dream of Mars, we can all dream of something, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's one other thing, at least right now, that I think the folks who are watching should know, is that you're donating all your personal profits from the book to your nonprofit. Why is that?
Yeah, so I am donating all of the proceeds that I make from the book to the Mars Generation nonprofit. And the reason for that is that I actually don't take a personal payment for the work that I do as Astronaut Abby. Even before this book, I would occasionally do some what's called influencer work, or I would go and speak at conferences or those types of things. And I've never taken a personal payment for that. I've always wanted the payments that I get for that work to go to the nonprofit to support its mission of being able to create wider and greater access to STEM topics. And the reason for that is because, and the reason that I'm donating my proceeds from the book as well, is because I think that the Mars Generation, obviously I started it, it's my baby, it's something that I believe in incredibly strongly and deeply. I believe that the goal of what the Mars Generation is doing is so important. And but even more so, I think that it comes back down to opportunity and access, which is that just because I've had these opportunities in the past that have set me up now to be able to do something like write a book and get paid to write it, doesn't necessarily mean that I am the only one out there who deserves to have those opportunities. It absolutely doesn't mean that I deserve that. It means that I got lucky in a lot of instances, and I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of people who have mentored me, who have given me advice, who have helped me along the way, all of those types of people. And so being able to donate back to the community through the Mars Generation is my way of kind of saying, I had this opportunity, I got to do this thing, and now I want to make sure that it doesn't die with me, that I'm passing that back to my community, trying to give back in some way. So that's why it's important to me to donate to the Mars Generation.
Well, if I could applaud you, I would applaud you.
Thank you.
You have one question in the chat. What degrees do you currently hold, Abby?
Oh, you stole my question, Ashley.
So I currently have a BA in biology from Wellesley College. And that's my only educational degree right now. I graduated last year. While I was there, I also had a study or a strong study in Russian. So I speak fluent Russian, and it's not a degree, but I also hold a pilot's license and an advanced rescue scuba certification.
Isn't that part, like the scuba part, they require that or something? Because I remember I was watching the Mars Generation documentary on Netflix over the weekend. Saw you a lot towards the middle and the end. It was pretty neat, just the whole documentary altogether. And I remember, I don't know if it was you or one of the other people that were there mentioned something about a scuba certification, which is, I guess, a little unusual thinking about being in space, but.
Right, on the nose when you think about it, and this is a.
There we go. You're back.
So this is actually a topic that I end up talking about a lot, because when you first think about it, it's like exactly what you were saying, Ashley, of how do scuba diving and space connect. And the reason that scuba diving is important to space exploration, and especially to people who want to go into space, is because being underwater is actually the closest simulation that we can get here on Earth to what's called neutral buoyancy. So, or microgravity. So being underwater really has a close simulation to what it's like to be in microgravity. And so it's a way that astronauts can train before they go to space for those sensations and for specific tasks. They do a lot of training for EVAs, which is extravehicular activities. So anytime you see an astronaut in one of those big chunky white suits out in space, that's an EVA. Or a spacewalk. And those are often 6 to 8 hours at a time of very meticulous and precise work, often on the International Space Station, fixing something or installing something or deploying a satellite. And they have to practice that before they leave. It would be kind of a mess if the first time astronauts experienced what it was like to work in microgravity was when they were actually trying to fix something on the International Space Station. So scuba diving is one of those ways that you can do that here on Earth. And one of the reasons that it's more of it's a more commonly used method, rather than, if you're familiar, the other method that you can use to simulate microgravity here on Earth is parabolic flight, where you can get into something which is frequently known as the vomit comet. It's an airplane that, it's an airplane that does these really large parabolas of flight, and it creates about 30 to 40 seconds of weightlessness or feeling of microgravity at the top of each of those parabolas. It's called the vomit comet because in order to get enough time to actually experience microgravity, you have to end up doing a lot of parabolas. But the reason that scuba diving is more frequently used than that is because A, it's a little bit cheaper, B, you can have longer periods of time underwater rather than doing 30 or 40 seconds of microgravity at a time. It's really hard to train for a 6 to 8 hour mission, fixing something on the International Space Station or something else in 30-second chunks. So instead, you use scuba diving, and it's a close proximity to what you can expect in space.
So Abby, I have a question for you. I've flown on Fat Albert and gotten a few seconds of zero gravity and fully understand where the word vomit comet comes from. But what about you? Have you done some of those parabolic flights?
I haven't gotten a chance yet to do an actual parabolic flight in a true vomit comet. But one of the things that really inspired me to, well, I'd always wanted to be a pilot, but one of the first times that I got to fly in a small aircraft, I was doing what's called like a discovery flight, where you go up with an instructor for about an hour just to see what it's like to be in a small aircraft. And during that time, he did a couple parabolas, which are much less in a small aircraft than you're going to end up getting in one of the real ones, but gave me about a second or two at a time of microgravity, where I actually have a video up on my YouTube channel where I show this, where I'm holding a binder while we do this, and you can actually see the binder start to like float above my hands. And you can see the ends of my hair just start to float a little bit and stuff like that. So I haven't gotten to do the full experience yet, but that tiny taste was enough to to be really exciting. I'm envious that you have.
Well, we were built in, but the flight crew was actually going upside down and weightless in front of me, and my camera was floating in front of me until I'd have to bring it down. And people were throwing up all around me, so it wasn't pleasant, trust me.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to that, right?
Yeah.
So do you practice, someone asked if you practice living on Mars here on Earth, that way you can prepare yourself for the one day going boldly where no one has gone yet.
So before the pandemic, I would have said probably not, but now quarantine feels like you're practicing for Mars all the time, right? Limited supply runs, limited human contact, all of that. No, I'm joking, of course. I personally haven't been involved in any Mars-based simulations, but they do exist and they occur, because one of the really big factors and important factors that we still have yet to deal with in terms of sending humans to Mars is the social isolation aspect of such a trip. To get to Mars, you're looking at roughly, with current technology, roughly 6 months to get there, and then you have to spend a certain amount of time there and then come back. So altogether, it could end up being anywhere between 1 to 3 years for a mission to Mars. And that's a long time for humans to be away, not just from other humans, except for their limited crewmates, but also to be away from humanity as a whole, to be so completely removed from our society and from anything that's normal and familiar. Not even then to add to that as well, having those very limited space that you're able to be in when you're on a mission to Mars, because the living space on a spacecraft is quite small and limited. So all of that starts to add up to create an emotional and mental fatigue for astronauts that can be a really difficult challenge to handle. And it's something that they haven't yet seen happen yet, because we haven't sent astronauts further than the moon. And that's one of the big issues facing astronauts who will go to Mars is how will we be able to support them with those issues? So that's a big part of what current simulations or analog Mars habitats here on Earth exist to test and to demonstrate, is if we isolate people in this Martian-like condition for X amount of time, how can we then also support them? And it's good to be practicing that here on Earth before we try it for the first time on a trip to Mars. So I personally, just to reiterate, haven't been involved in that, but those experiments are really interesting, and I'd recommend people take a look into those if you're interested.
Have you had a chance to tour SpaceX or been there for any of the launches recently?
Yes, so I actually, for not this past summer, but the last 2 summers prior, I was working at Kennedy Space Center in a Mars astrobiology research laboratory. And when I was there, I did get to see a couple SpaceX launches. I've seen launches from a couple other of the private space companies down there, and had the opportunity to tour both the SpaceX facilities and a couple of other ones, like getting to go out and look at their launch pads and their production facilities and all of that, which is incredible to see. Both the launch pads are wonderful, and also getting to walk under rockets that are currently in the production phase really puts into perspective just how gargantuan and mammoth rockets are. To see them up close and personal and just be able to look up at them or look at them being worked on is quite an incredible experience.
It's very interesting, the scenario you gave about being cramped, isolation, the travel for months or even years. And I think we've become so accustomed to seeing things like 2001: A Space Odyssey and how they visioned it. And it's not like that at all. And I guess that is, in fact, something that you and other people who are involved in wanting to get to space really have to be prepared for. So it makes perfect sense what you're saying.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that a lot of the astronauts that I've talked to and gotten the chance to speak with will tell you that, yes, being an astronaut is this incredible experience, and it's wonderful and everything. There's a lot about it that's exactly what you'd expect, which is that it's breathtaking and mind-blowing and impactful and all of that. But what they always say is the caveat is that it's not quite like what you see in a lot of media representations of space exploration. It's not quite the way it is in Star Trek, where you have, lots of living space and, just things like that. The astronauts that I've spoken to have said that, in essence, being an astronaut turns into being a glorified space plumber as well. Because you end up spending a lot of your time fixing things that break down in space. And it turns out to not be quite as, the realities of the career are not always quite what they seem. So on the one hand, it is an incredible and a lot of what you'd imagine. And on the other hand, the reality is slightly different from what we perceive through a lot of things.
Yeah, and that makes obviously perfect sense. And I never thought about it as a space plumber, but I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, it's the most
Yeah.
important piece of equipment on the International Space Station.
Yeah. Somehow you remind me of Howard Wolowitz on The Big Bang Theory, but that's okay. So let me ask you, having, with everything that you've said, where are you in this journey of becoming an astronaut?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I graduated from my undergraduate degree last year and have been spending this past year working on writing my book, doing a lot of things. I was working with an educational nonprofit in Wyoming to help share the beautiful night skies of Wyoming with the public, working on getting the next step in my pilot's license. So I'm currently a licensed pilot, and right now the next big milestone, now that I've announced the book, the next big milestone that I have to look forward to is that I'm currently working on something called an instrument rating. So it's the next rating that I would add to in addition to my pilot's license. I'm continuing to do some training for scuba diving, and I'm also in the process of researching and applying to graduate schools for a graduate degree, hopefully in astrobiology or planetary geosciences. So the next year has a lot in store for me, I think.
So I don't even know how you get it all in there. Do you sleep?
Not as much as I'd like to.
I can certainly believe that. We had a person on our program last week. His name is Jens Dombach, and he's from Germany. And I think he believes himself to be Spock, but that's a whole other story. But he wrote in a question because it's probably now about 2:30, close to 3 o'clock in the morning, and he wasn't going to be able to see you live. But he did write in, and his question was, and then I'm going to expand on it for a second, but his question was, who do you admire? So my question is there anyone, past or present, male or female, who inspire you?
Absolutely. I could give you, how much time do we have? I could go on a whole list of.
Do it.
There are so many incredible people, both in the space industry throughout the history of space exploration and currently, who have been really inspirational to me. And then there are also so many people who have impacted my life as I was growing up and chasing after this really big and kind of audacious or out of this world dream that have inspired me. But I feel the need to focus on one person for this answer, which is my co-founder of the Mars generation, Nicole, who has been there with me every step of the way, who really, you asked, how do I do all of this? Do I sleep? And one of the answers is that I have an incredible team of people. I have Nicole and a couple other people, our board members, who help to carry a lot of that big heavy load of the operations and such of a nonprofit like this. And furthermore, has supported my dream forever, pretty much. I should mention that Nicole is also my mom. So not to be too cheesy with that answer.
I was going to ask you that. I wasn't going to ask you that on the air, but I've been messaging back and forth with Nicole, and obviously you share the same last name. So
Yeah.
I was just curious who she was.
Yeah, so that's my mom, who I ended up co-founding a nonprofit with. And so I feel like sometimes I wonder if that's a cheesy answer to the question, to say that the person who inspires me is my mom. But the reality of it is that she is, because she has shown time and time again that she has supported my dream. And furthermore, she goes out there and doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk of trying to do good for the world. And that's one of the things that I find the most incredible and inspirational about Nicole, is that she goes out there and she does the hard work of trying to make things better in the world. So through the Mars Generation, with her own business, really every area that I've seen her walk through in life, she doesn't just walk through and leave. She walks through and she looks around her and she says, what can I do to help? And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, is to reach out to people around you and see what the needs are, and then work to fix them.
So I mentioned I have two children that are your age, and so I understand what it is to be a parent of I'm going
A
to
young
call you
adult right now,
a
yeah.
young, right, exactly, a young adult. And I think, and I obviously have never spoken to your mom, but it seems to me that parents who are proud of their children will do anything to help their children. And I think your mother must be very proud of you.
I think you're right. I'm lucky that she tells me that quite frequently, that she's proud of the work that I do, and the big dream that I have, and all of that. And I think you're right as well, that parents really can be your greatest advocate, because they will do anything that they can to help you. So
Exactly.
we're lucky to have such wonderful parents.
Well, I wish you would tell that to my kids, but thanks.
So
You can show them this clip.
So the process that you had for the space camp thing that you did in the Mars Generation, how long did it take you to get accepted? Or is it like like a college acceptance program kind of thing, or?
So Space Camp is actually a camp for teenagers and kids that's run through the United States Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And there isn't actually any applying or being accepted or denied. It's a lot like other camps that you can go to, where you sign up, you pay for it, and then you go. For the part that comes in for a lot of students, though, where they need to get accepted, is that Space Camp's actually very expensive. As well as getting down to Alabama for a lot of students is a difficult thing. Let's say if you're like me and you live in Minnesota, that becomes an expensive thing and a difficult thing to get from Minnesota down to Alabama when you're 12 or 13. And so I was fortunate when I was a teenager, and my mom was a single mom who was working as a public high school teacher. We didn't quite have the resources for me to go to Space Camp. She actually had heard about Space Camp a couple years before, when I was a kid, and had decided not to tell me, because she knew that we couldn't quite make it happen. And so then a couple years later, someone came to us and said, there's this scholarship that Abby should really think about applying to. There's this group that in Minnesota that takes a group of kids to Space Camp every year, and they help with like community fundraising and giving partial scholarships to the students to make it more affordable. And so that's where some of the applying comes into, is if kids want to go to Space Camp, but they can't afford it, they might have to find a scholarship or some other way that they can apply and hopefully be accepted then. I was fortunate that I was then able to go to Space Camp, and that's a big part of why the Mars Generation, one of our programs, is to offer scholarships to students. So far, we've sent 44 students on full paid scholarships, including transportation and all other fees associated to Space Camp, in an effort really to like pass that along and to make sure that it's something that's more accessible to more people, because there's a lot of kids out there like me who couldn't really afford it when they were teenagers or kids, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't still get to go, because I think space camp is a really fun and incredible experience for a young person to have.
So what was when you did the whole space camp experience, because I was watching the documentary and I saw everyone doing this thing where they had to come up with a concept rocket to launch and to be able to make it to whatever point A or point B and stuff like that. What was because I saw everyone had their own little job or task to do. You know, you had the guys that were on that simulated being in the actual rocket and the ones actually running mission control. What were you doing?
Yeah, so when I was at space camp, so what they do, it's a simulation. You do like a 24-hour simulation where you pretend, like you said, to launch a mission. And there are 3 different areas that the students, at least when I was there are 3 different areas that the campers would be in. It was either mission control, shuttle, or International Space Station. And so I was one of the astronauts on the space shuttle at the time, which I believe in recent years, and it's crazy now when I talk about this, because I suppose I am aging myself now. There are no space shuttles anymore in the real world or at space camp. Now they've replaced those, I believe. They still have mission control. They still have the International Space Station simulator. And now they've replaced the shuttle simulator with commercial crew vehicles. So similar to like the Orion or something like that, or the Dragon. But yes, I believe that when I went, I was one of the simulated astronauts on the space shuttle.
Very nice. Very nice. You've had a very interesting life to this point.
Thank you.
I'm going to double back because I had another question, and it was related to those people who maybe inspire you, and you did mention your mom as well. But my question is there anyone that you've ever met that has left you awestruck?
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the best, well, I have 2 really great stories I can tell about that. The first one is that once I had started, well, I'll do them in chronological order. So one of the first instances I had where I was just absolutely starstruck, you might say, by meeting someone was when I was 13 years old and I met an astronaut. It was actually one of the first astronauts I'd ever met. He was from the European Space Agency. His name was Luca Parmitano, and I met him through random chance in an airport. Just walking through the airport, was standing in the security line, and I recognized him. And I was with my mom, of course, because I was 13. And I pointed him out to her, and I told her, Mom, I think that's astronaut Luca Parmitano. And she was like, don't point, that's rude. And also, that's probably not him, because not all bald men are astronauts, Abby.
It's like, yeah, you kind of forget. Yes.
Right. And so I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that bald dude is an astronaut. And so I went up to him after we all got through security, and I introduced myself, and I asked if I could interview him quickly. And he ended up being incredibly generous with his time that day. We sat down in the airport for about an hour and got to talk about really everything, like his experience as an astronaut so far. He gave me a lot of advice for my own career and just left me feeling really inspired. And it was a moment where I was awestruck, not just because he was an astronaut and I got to meet him, but because he was one of those people that you meet in life who really cares about other people around them. Like, he, at the drop of a hat, was willing to spend an hour talking to a young fan. And I later found out that he was supposed to spend that hour meeting up with his wife. They were on different layovers, or on the same layover of different flights that they were on, and they were going to meet up and spend an hour together, like having lunch. And he called her and said, we're going to have to reschedule because there's this young person who's really passionate about space, and I want to spend some time talking to her about this. Which, for him to take that kind of time out of his life was amazing. But even more amazing was what he did at the end, which is that he gave me his email address, and he said, if you have any more questions, you can send me an email. I will be your astronaut. And then he upheld that promise. We stayed in touch through the years afterwards. When he went to space through Baikonur, or from Baikonur, I actually got to go and watch his launch and then work with him while he was in space as his Earth liaison to share his experiences living and working in space with a wider variety of people here on Earth. So he was someone who absolutely inspired me and left me starstruck from having met. The second person, who I think this is another, the story is a little bit funnier. An instance where I was really starstruck was after I started the Mars Generation nonprofit and it started to really gain some traction. It was during my first semester of college. I was sitting in the library one day studying, and I got a phone call. And I don't know if this is true for everyone in my generation, but I don't really use my phone as a phone very often. And so I looked at it and I saw that the number was one I didn't recognize. I was like, that must be spam. I didn't answer it. And I got another phone call a minute later, same number, didn't answer it. And then 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from my mom. And of course I answer that, even though I'm in the library. And she's on the other end yelling, someone just sent me an email saying that Buzz Aldrin is trying to call you and that you're hanging up on him. You need to answer your phone. And it turns out, yeah, so I'm the person who hung up on Buzz Aldrin because I thought he was a telemarketer. And it turns out that he just wanted to call and chat about space and about, because he runs a nonprofit as well that works on sharing space with people and positioning the future of space. So he just wanted to call and chat about space a little bit. And we ended up getting to talk, and I was able to apologize for for not answering. But that was another instance that left me quite awestruck from getting to chat with him.
That's great.
Well,
it's great to have memories like that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Abby, my day job is a reporter, so occasionally I do get a dream come true. And my two dreams when it comes to NASA are interviewing Charlie Duke, who was Capcom for Apollo 11.
Uh-huh.
And that was amazing because I watched Apollo 11 land by peeking my head into a bar in a national park in California as a 10-year-old, and that fuzzy video, nothing like obviously the last launch. And then Norm Thagard, we actually have a middle school named after him here, and I got a chance to meet him, and I have to admit I was a bit of a fanboy with both of them because I grew up in the first renaissance of space flight in the 60s, where you'd stop school, turn on the black and white TV, and watch Mercury go up.
Right. Yeah, those are incredible experiences to have, aren't they? Like, that just sounds, I'm with you that meeting people like that, yeah, I definitely end up fangirling a little bit at those, those meetings for sure.
You know, it's interesting because I had an opportunity to meet Buzz. It's quite a while now. And he was such a charming person when he wasn't on his cell phone. But now I know who he was talking to.
It's my fault. Yep.
At least I didn't hang up on him, but that's okay.
Hey, that's a badge of honor that I will wear for the rest of my life, that I hung up on Buzz Aldrin. So
that's great. That's great. So I am gonna shift gears a little bit, because I think you know that we are sort of a Star Trek show. And I don't think it would be fair to leave without asking you a question or so about Star Trek. And, you know, Star Trek has inspired so many individuals to help, I always say, to advance the human condition. And people like Mae Jemison is a perfect example. And even I happened to watch something not too long ago, and it was Neil Armstrong was presenting an award to Captain Sully. And he was doing his speech, and he said, "I'm hoping for my next command, I'll be given a Federation starship." So my question to you, Abby, is do you have any Star Trek memories?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a Star Trek fan for sure. And I agree with you completely that like Star Trek has done so much to advance both people's interest in space and also what people believe to be possible, and to spark that curiosity in all of us of what's out there, what can we explore, what can we discover. And it definitely did that for me. It's hard to place my finger on why I became interested in space, or what created this dream of mine to go to space and to go to Mars, because it was at such an early age. It's truly one of the first things that I remember is this idea of being interested in space and wanting to go there. But I don't doubt for a moment that Star Trek had something to do with that, because I was an avid consumer of every book or show, or even once the movies came out of Star Trek that I could get my hands on as a kid, and I think that influenced my dream for sure. But one of the most fond memories I have of Star Trek is actually from college. My astro club that I was a part of in college during the winter months would meet every week or so for a weekly Star Trek night in the school observatory, where we'd get together and we'd all, be sitting there on a Friday night having snacks and doing homework and watching Star Trek on a projector screen. And it's just a very fond memory of great people at a great time watching a great show.
Thanks. I appreciate you sharing that. So I know we're coming sort of to the end of our hour, though looks like we probably will go over it a little bit, and that's okay. But again, for the folks who are with us, I almost want to say, to sum up your life so far, you're a graduate of Wellesley College with a degree in biology. You founded the Mars Generation, and you finished writing a book that's soon to be published. So the question is, Abby, what's next for you?
So my next steps are continuing to work on the next piece after my pilot's license, which is the instrument rating. So continuing to do a lot more flying and improve my skill set there. And then also, obviously, launching my book in January. It comes out January 19th, 2021, which should be really exciting. And it's available for pre-order right now. Those are things I'm supposed to say, I suppose. But in addition to that, the next big step on my horizon and on my radar is hopefully grad school. I'm really interested in going back to school soon. And so I'm in the process of researching and deciding what schools I want to apply to for a degree in astrobiology or planetary geophysics. And then, of course, at the same time, continuing with the Mars Generation, continuing to do the great work we've been doing. And who knows, we might have a couple ways that we're branching out in the future, but I can't share too much of that right now. You'll just have to keep an eye on us in the next couple months and years.
Well, that actually brings me to what would be my last question is, how do people find you and follow you?
Yeah, so I am on pretty much all the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. My username is Astronaut Abby on most of those. And I also have a website, astronautabby.com. And then the same for the Mars Generation. The Mars Generation is just the Mars Generation on pretty much any social media platform. And you can also find and follow along with the Mars Generation at the website, themarsgeneration.org.
Well, what advice do you have for the next generation that comes even with the generation that's coming up just behind you, who wants to be an astronaut?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I think the more advice out there, the better. The more we can tell the upcoming generation, the better footing they'll be on. And the piece of advice that I found the most impactful myself as I chase after this career is, it's going to sound a little controversial at first, but it's to be ready to fail. It sounds like I'm telling kids and young people out there that they're going to fail, but in reality, what I want the next generation to be aware of as they chase after their big dreams, and whatever that dream may be, but especially if it's one like becoming an astronaut, is that you will fail along the way. I'm not saying that people are going to fail in the long run, but there will be instances and moments of failure, times when you scrape your knees, you fall down. And what I found is that the most important thing is not that you don't fail at any point, but rather how you react and respond when that does happen, because it's inevitable. Life is hard. There's all kinds of curveballs, and especially when you're chasing after a dream like mine, which is going to take another 15 to 20 years to fulfill, there's a lot of instances for things to go wrong or failures to happen. And I think that the most important part of having a good reaction that'll help you turn that failure into a stepping stone instead of a roadblock is thinking about it before it happens and saying, like, how am I going to handle this when it happens? How can I change my mindset about failure so that when it happens, it's not a devastating instance that causes you to turn away from your dream, but instead it becomes an instance where you can respond positively to it and, you know, get back up and try again and learn something from that. So that's the best advice I think I have.
Well, you know, that's a very important piece. Being a person who has damaged knees over the years of falling down, and there's again a phrase that I remember from years ago, where someone said, "It's not how many times you fall, it's how you get up."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's always about how you respond to those instances of failure or falling down. That's what really defines where you'll go or whether or not you'll be able to reach your Mars, your big dream.
Your big dream, which, remember, that's what it's called, right? The big dream.
Dream big.
Dream big. Dream big.
Yep.
So, you know, I want to say that you certainly are inspiring. You certainly are driven.
Thank you.
You certainly, you know, you're one of the few people that I've ever had the pleasure to talk to who really have a thought about where you want to go in life, and you're working towards it. And that's very admirable. And I just hope you don't mind me saying that.
No, I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I think this was great. I hope you think it was great, but I thought it was great. And we would love to have you back here again at some point, maybe after your book is out, and you can plug that, which is great. And you know, we have a Star Trek studio in Kingsland, Georgia. And I'm hoping that maybe you can visit it one day when you go see the SpaceX spaceport in Kingsland that they're talking about building. So maybe we'll have you as a neighbor at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation, both to return to the show and someday maybe even to visit in person. We'll have to keep that on the roster for someday in the future.
Oh yeah, like you have all that time to come to the studio. I get it.
Hey, I'd like to.
Well, again, I just want to thank you. And I just had a lot of fun. It was a pleasure meeting you. It was a pleasure to get to know you. And I feel like I do know you. And yeah, we'd all love to see you again. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.